All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Microsoft E7, aka the Frontier Suite, as Microsoft is calling it, their new license that was released as of May 1st, 2026. I am Alexis Hesseltine. I am very excited to be here, joined by two forces here at Managed Solution, my technical counterparts. Joining me today is Ashley Triplett. She is our Director of Licensing and Procurement. She is one of our resident experts in all things Microsoft licensing. For those of you that may have worked with Ashley in the past, I know you know what a wealth of knowledge she is and brings to the table. So I'm excited to hear from her today. Also joining us is Jeff Lizzerbrom, an additional wealth of knowledge. His expertise is primarily in Microsoft's modern workplace, as well as the security suite. Extremely well versed and quite technical as it pertains to Microsoft's latest and greatest in the O365 environment. So he's going to be sharing about all that is included in the Microsoft E7 platform and what that means for your organization. So let's dive in.
It's great to be with you, Ashley and Alexis.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Again, y'all, thank y'all so much for joining. Before we dive into all that is included in the latest Microsoft E7 suite, wanted to give you a super quick overview of Managed Solution, who we are, what we do, and how it pertains to Microsoft and our partnership there. To Managed Solution, for those of you that may not know, we are headquartered in San Diego. We've been around since '02. We actually sit in the top 1% of Microsoft consultancies globally. With that, we have a recognized deep bench of Microsoft certified engineers that we leverage for various professional services and project engagements across the Microsoft stack. We are also considered a tier one, now a direct CSP with Microsoft, which means we have a direct relationship with Microsoft. So we get some excellent discounting and therefore some excellent support that we can pass on to clients as it pertains to their licensing. But we are a 100% US-based team that pertains to our help desk team, our engineering bench, as well as our CSP team. 20 plus years in the Microsoft ecosystem, as well as our managed services practice. So some of you may not know that we are actually a full service MSP as well. We offer everything from outsourced help desk services, level 1, level 2, level 3 ticketing, as well as what I consider your full-blown managed IT services. Network monitoring, firewalls, patching, EDR security, and everything there in between. And really serve as a customer first approach. For those of you that have worked with us, we are very client focused. We do our very best to be very flexible and amenable in terms of our processes and procedures to really cultivate custom solutions and packages that pertain, of course, to our areas of expertise that fit within your organizations. And today we'll be focused, of course, on Microsoft. So Jeff, if you wouldn't mind diving into the next slide and we can talk a little bit more about our CSP practice and how that pertains to today's conversation. So I work a lot with our O365 team, as we call them. They are who support our CSP clients, and that team, again, is led by none other than Ashley Triplett here. But we are, as I mentioned, formerly known as a Tier 1 CSP. That is now known as a direct CSP with Microsoft. With that, because we are direct, we do get some excellent discounting. We also offer complimentary support and management to all of our CSP customers. That includes a 15-minute response SLA, which I will say is rather unheard of in the MSP world and CSP world nowadays. And we also offer complimentary access to what's called Microsoft Premier Support. For those of you that may not be familiar with Microsoft Premier Support, that is essentially escalated support directly with Microsoft. So in the event that you are working with Managed Solution to procure licensing, you're experiencing a Microsoft related issue, we can escalate that ticket on your behalf through this Premier Support path. And that would get you access to a Microsoft engineer same day or next day. It is something that Managed Solution we actually pay for on our side as a partner, and we extend that to all of our clients at no additional cost. Aside from that, I know one of the common frustrations that I hear from customers is when it comes to managing the various renewal dates for their Microsoft licenses. If you were to procure licensing from Managed Solution, all licensing is co-termed, at least those that you are procuring on an annual basis. So we will work with you as you move forward to get all of those licenses co-termed to a single annual renewal date. So you have one renewal date for all of your licenses throughout the year. Ashley, have I left anything out as far as what sets us apart in terms of our CSP platform?
Yeah, I'm happy to add in a couple of things. We do also have a self-service portal, so that's available for you 24/7. It authenticates with Microsoft, has security built in, so it's a really great tool that our customers love to be able to use. And then, addition to all that, we have complimentary consulting and what we call licensing optimization on demand anytime that you are needing or wanting to look through your Microsoft environment to make sure your licensing are assigned to users that are still employed in your company. We're happy to go through that with you. We handle licensing quite differently here. We don't upsell you, but we optimize your spend.
And I think that's very, very important, Ashley. I'm so glad that you brought that up because I have seen you personally do that time and time again for so many of our clients. We had a client very recently that I saw you save over $100,000 annually on their contract. This is something that we go through by default to make sure that you are licensed appropriately. It's so important. So thank you for bringing that up.
My pleasure.
So maybe I'll take the conversation of why this matters now, because you as an organization are probably using AI to some capacity. I can't believe Copilot has been out for 3+ years now.
I can't
But
believe that
now,
either.
yeah,
That's
and
crazy.
it's really moving from a pilot testing mode to production. So there's a lot of expansion going on, especially with our customers. And with that said, licensing gets a little complex because there's Copilot as a license, there's Copilot Studio tenant licensing, and there's a lot of things that happen, and it becomes kind of hard to manage sometimes. But also there's AI sprawl. So back in the day, we used to have team sprawl, but now we're talking about agent sprawl. And the ability to govern and secure the agent sprawl is becoming pretty critical these days. And so quite commonly, we'll see that there's lack of visibility. How are we using AI? There's no governance. How are we allowing certain things like Anthropic to be used, but maybe other models not to be used, or OpenAI? Also, life cycle management of not only identities of users, but identities of agents. Everything's pretty manual these days. And if you don't have good structured data, Copilot is not going to work really to the degree that you want, so it becomes critical to have some structured AI and structured data behind it.
That's a huge focus on the E7 license is the governance around this new AI technology and really getting that governance around your agents that are getting built in your organization. We're going to really hone in on a lot of that in this webinar, and I'm really excited to dive in. So that's a great point, Jeff.
So many questions that we get from our clients and our network is who needs Copilot? We want Copilot, we want AI within our organization. And then the next step, once we've determined and they've determined where exactly that fits within their organization and what the use case is, the business use case for Copilot and AI is then the governance aspect. So again, I think this naturally makes sense as the next step in evolution here with this E7 license and why we're talking about it today.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's one SKU. It just makes it super simple. It's very AI focused. It goes beyond, like we used to call Microsoft 365 E5 the king of all licenses.
Right.
But even so, you still needed, right, some add-ons even beyond that. So it's really kind of evolved to that unified platform. I think it's really going to be a good solution for many in the future here. So why don't we talk about really kind of what has changed? So on the topic of what E5 provided versus what E7 provides now, you can see there are two main components that E5 had all along. It's really a lot of the secure productivity, right? Everything that is included with Defender, compliance as well. There were many assets in terms of Microsoft Purview, which provides you things like data loss prevention and provides a really good foundation for both security and compliance to protect users. To this day, it still is. At this point, it was the industry-leading security license. Now we're focusing on to adding on some other things, Copilot, also Agent 365. So these things combined give you overall governance, but along with that, we still need to have that Entra lifecycle identity and as well as the data governance and also just the data optimization. So E7 really has all of the components to making sure that your AI solution, whether it's just using Copilot for productivity or using an agent that is expanding and connecting and gathering and providing workflows, that it's going to work smoothly from that fashion. So that said, anything related to that, I mean, to sum it up, these are really the main components that I would really define as being part of the full E7 suite. It's first and foremost gives you the Microsoft Copilot licensing. It gives you the Microsoft Agent 365, which we're going to show you all of the dashboards and visibility. And then as far as protecting identities and also creating and managing identities, there's a lot of benefits there as well as that data governance. I'm going to show a demo just coming up of what it actually looks like. But in a nutshell, autonomous agents are those agents that are created that are outside of the Microsoft Copilot box, if you will. So there are independent agents that can be created, built, and there could be, and that's what is meant by autonomous. They kind of stand alone from the overall Copilot ecosystem, but they do very specific things. And the term auto in that name also indicates that there are agents that do a lot more in terms of automated workflows. So that's what's really meant by autonomous agents and also automated agents. And Agent 365 is really the umbrella that's overseeing what those agents can and cannot do in the organization.
And it opens up the visibility as well. I feel like that's the most biggest part. And for any of the companies out there, to be able to see all the agents that all the users have created by utilizing that Agent 365.
Yeah, so, absolutely. And one of my favorite things that come out of it are understanding the usage of AI in terms of how much more productive is the organization in terms of like percentage of output or percentage of efficiency. And that all equates to ROI. We all the finance heads want to kind of see to make sure that the investment is going in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now, Ashley, you probably have conversations quite a bit, and Alexis as well, about who needs E7 because it is now replacing the king of the giants in terms of the Microsoft license family, but not everyone needs it. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Just like E5, not everyone needs, the king of the licensing, like you called it. That's a great way to put it. So of course, E5 was the workhorse that we have always known for years. And now with the AI coming to life for everyone, it's really going to be E7 in the environments where you already are honing in, you've done the adoption of AI, and your company or your users are moving forward to the next level of that where they're building those agents. If they're not building agents and you don't have a lot of Copilot users, AE7 is probably not for you. It's really where Jeff honed in on it a moment ago, those autonomous agents that are working on behalf of the user. That's where you're really going to hone in and be able to take advantage of everything that E7 is going to bring to you. Because that governance that you had in your E5 for your users is now going to extend to their agents that they're building. And that's the most important key.
Mm-hmm. And just to kind of tail on that, uh, autonomous agents also have sometimes their own identities. So literally, you can create an identity within your organization as if it's an employee identity, but it's an agent identity that is really becoming part of the interactions and conversations and workflows and everything. So, we have to treat those just like they're another human in the organization sometimes. Ashley, I'll probably throw this over to you to really show, how we approach optimization in terms of right sizing.
Yes, absolutely. Happy to help with this one. Um, there's so many different licenses out there. I'm sure whenever you first think about Microsoft licensing, you think of a specific suite. Maybe it's E3, maybe it's E5. But there are thousands of licenses, and we are here to help you understand where those licenses have bundled SKUs underneath them. You could be buying licenses like an E3 and also buying a Defender suite for your security, but not knowing that Defender suite is actually built in, that there are components of Defender built into the E3. We'll go into that detail of that licensing with you and really hone in on what you're actually utilizing today. Are you utilizing everything that really makes sense for you to be in one of those big suites? Or are you really only using some of the components within it? So we will help you, educate you on what you have today, what it's giving you, make sure that that licensing is actually being used. There's so many different scenarios, but sometimes outside of the duplicate licensing or overlap licensing, what we like to call it, there's also users that are terminated that are still licensed in your environment. And that happens to everyone. Don't feel singled out. It's happening across the board. It's very rare that I don't find that being a part of the scenario going on when I dive into these. I help highlight those user accounts that seem to be terminated users that are still in there and being licensed. And we help with removing those licenses, moving mailboxes to shared so data is reserved, and talk through all the different components that entails. Um, there's also scenarios where you could be in a department or you want to license each department, or even more specifically to the roles. Maybe your janitorial staff is significantly over licensed. They might have an E3 license and they don't even sit behind a computer. So we'll help you go through those scenarios and make sure you're licensed accordingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, great points. So this all brings us to AI requiring more visibility than ever before. And this is really the right time to start thinking about your strategy on how you're adopting Copilot, AI in general, because at this point, we're seeing that most companies lack that visibility. And you can kind of see from these metrics here that 72% of organizations they lack reporting. Now, they have reporting if you have Copilot licensing, but are they using it effectively? Now, we also know that usually when Copilot and other AI solutions are rolled out, it's usually just used by really those top users, which are kind of the heavy hitting users, and we're not realizing how effective it could be for the rest of the organization. And so really this number is improving. I think we're starting to see some adoption measures as we look through what we have a lighthouse that we can kind of see some metrics of AI adoption over time. But when it is adopted, there's definitely ROI realization. Alexis, do you have anything that might add on onto some of the visibility here?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think, the kind of second thought or afterthought, if you will, for a lot of organizations that we've seen the last few years, couple of years especially, that have been so eager for obvious reasons to adopt Copilot and AI, and then realizing, oh gosh, we're not seeing the ROI that we anticipated, and that's partially due to the fact that there is no reporting or visibility into what they're actually getting. It's all based on much more qualitative, right? Results and
Mm-hmm.
feedback, right? There's no quantitative results to base those thoughts on in many cases, right, for some of our clients. And so now that there's this reporting and this visibility that is becoming so much more widely available, it's been a game changer, and I think it's going to continue as we see AI not only changing and evolving, but how it impacts us and end users moving forward.
Yeah. Well, why don't we take a look at some examples of how we can gain that visibility using the E7 license or Copilot in and of itself. Well, we're going to start with Copilot and admin reporting, and this is done through what is called the Copilot control system. So it's really the first step in gaining visibility into how things like Copilot is being used. And why don't we just kind of load this up into action here. Um, when we go into our admin center, so if you're an admin of your tenant, you have access to the Microsoft Copilot control system, where it really gives a lot of advice on how to optimize, encourage, how to make sure that there's continued business impact, and also leveraging users as really the speaker board to give feedback on Copilot effectiveness, because they're the ones who are really promoting it within the organization. And here's a dashboard that shows across the board about meetings, email, collaboration. Plus, you can compare. So if you have separate departments, separate organizations under the single organization, you can kind of pick and choose different areas of the organization to compare how usage is, say like between finance and marketing, or between unit one and unit two. And across the board, you can see how the usage is across all of the applications where Copilot is embedded. So lots of visibility there. It also works within Copilot Studio visibility and then agents as well. So that's known as that Copilot control system. So that's really the first step into it. I was going to go right into the agent aspect of it and the AI portion, where automated and autonomous agents are really starting to grow here. So the other aspect of it is Agent 365, which is going to be that governance view of how are we going to control the AI sprawl. So anything before I go into this next demo that Ashley or Alexis want to chime in on?
No, I was super excited to see that video. That was a great representation. Thank you for sharing that.
Great, great. So the 365 Agent 365, it's a governance tool. So it not only performs discovery of agents that are running across the tenant, and for you admins out there who might be using something like Cloud App Discovery, this is somewhat similar. It's not only discovering apps, but in a sense, this is discovering agents that are running in your organization. From there, we can do policy enforcement. Everything is centered around the same admin center that we're using in the Microsoft 365 admin center. And this is where we can monitor for any kind of risk. So let's take a look at this in motion, where in the same area, Microsoft Admin Center, you'll see the agents. And if you're licensed with Agent 365, this whole dashboard comes alive. You can see publishers, platforms. You can see how many agents are running across the organization that are active. And sometimes it gets a little scary when we start talking about all of those agents that are within the organization, because there's going to be numerous ones that are actually active. And here's an example of one where you can dive into what is this agent, what platform was it built from, where do users access it from? In this case, it's Microsoft 365 and Teams, and who the owner is. So you can always reach out to the owner for any kind of questions there. Now, in the security and compliance area, we are using Microsoft Purview, Entra, and Defender. And these are all included in that E7 to enable policies to help control the risk of running agents like this in the environment. We can also see users who are identified as having access and the activity. And we can also, in that red area, that exceptions, sometimes that's a pretty important area. That sometimes means agents are not running as expected, and we might need to look into it a little bit more. So all that said and done, the permissions, the governance, the performance of these agents is what gives that visibility. Now, even more importantly is risk. Let's say we want to dive into some agents that are showing some of that risk. And if we looked at this one, like the comms agent, for example, you'll see that it was automatically blocked, which is what we want whenever there's risk there. But we can also look at the mapping because as you go into the future of using more and more agents, some agents depend on other agents to do certain workflows. And the dependency mapping is a really useful way to visualize what agents have in common with each other. So if one agent breaks, it might impact a workflow of another. So this is giving us a really good sense of what's happening from at scale. So hopefully that was helpful from that perspective.
It most
Yeah.
definitely is. I learned a lot just looking at that. I've read so much about it and understand it from an outside perspective, but that was great insight.
Yeah, I'm a very visual learner, so that was the first time I'd seen any of that. So that's great. No, I'm serious. I
Well,
had not seen
y-
that.
I really love all of the colors and dashboards as well. I just,
Yeah.
in the day when we're just looking at PowerShell screens, it can, this gives you a little bit more excitement and a little bit more meaningfulness of what's going
Mm-hmm.
on.
Aesthetically
Yeah.
pleasing as well. Yeah, I must say.
So, the other aspect of the licenses is the identity. Identity is that foundation of anything to do with users and agents alike. And lifecycle is pretty critical. We don't want, user accounts to be, still available when a user might have departed the organization. There has to be some type of life cycle that happens. And in many cases, it's manual, but this adds in a lot of automation with zero trust. So an example of this would be, we're going to look at, is how do we, automate the onboarding of identities? How do we provision? What type of policies go in? And especially the whole life cycle of offboarding is critical as well. So with that said, this license is really complete. It couldn't really do it without, having things like Entra identity lifecycle management. And you'll know, like from this, users are created, they're enabled. PCs sometimes are provisioned and shipped to them. Sometimes people have to leave the organization, and you can see Alan's not too happy about that. But there's also areas where you're working and you just can't get access to certain sites and things like that. So it becomes a very manually intensive thing. And Entra lifecycle identity lifecycle management gives us those steps that will be task oriented, and they can really kind of help create things. And it integrates with things like SAP, Workday, a lot of the common HR platforms where users are sourced. Whether it's an agent identity or a user identity, there's joiner type of activity where people are onboarded, agents are onboarded, but there's also leaver activities where we just need that agent to go away. We're not using it anymore. So some of the tasks that we can do within these policies to run automatically are things like when we're onboarding, we could add users. We can send out emails to that user and welcome them and give them their one-time password for them to reset. And we can also do a lot of customizations as well. And this Copilot is going to be a big part of this type of automation where there might be a custom workflow to, say, create some additional requirements or laptop specifications to address. So that in itself is a huge time saver type of thing, which is always part of that E7, but it's even stronger when Copilot is really coming into the picture. And I'll kind of leave it for any questions from both of you, if there's any last minute comments on the identity part.
None from my side at the moment. Again, I'm really absorbing a lot of this information personally.
Good, good. And that gave me time to take a sip to go into the next area.
Go.
And this last area is the data governance. So data governance, what do we mean by that? Well, we want to make sure that things that, if files, for example, and folders and document libraries in SharePoint are structured and they're enabled with things like indexing and making Copilot, having Copilot be able to search the data a lot easier. What we do see quite commonly, you might be coming from a file server and you're migrating all of that content into a SharePoint document library. And before you know it, it's really been at that critical mass where indexing automatically gets shut off. It's not as efficient. So data governance is really part of that. But it's also a security type of story to tell here. So SharePoint Advanced Governance is part of that licensing as well. As it was previously, it was an add-on. With E7, it's part of this where we have sites. So site lifecycle management. This is where we might have SharePoint sites that might be used or might not be used. We can do better data classification. We can have better access and visibility into how data is being used, and also do a lot of policy-driven enforcement of who can access documents, who should not be accessing documents, and things like that. So we're going to go into that last visualization, and this, in sense, is in your SharePoint Admin Center. And within that Admin Center, there's the advanced management. And right away, you can see there's Copilot and preparing SharePoint and Copilot together to improve the results across all of the apps. So whether you're using Excel, PowerPoint, Word, even Outlook, data really needs attention, right? And there's site lifecycle management on the left there, which means that, hey, I might have some data that's been inactive for a while. We also have some sites on the right side that might require attention because there's been too much oversharing. So advanced management is really key, especially when it's combined with Copilot, to make sure that, first off, users can query Copilot, they can prompt it and get feedback, and they can get feedback that is related to them. Whereas if it's something more sensitive, maybe that feedback should be left for those who have access to what they need. And so that whole governance in SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive across the board is really important.
And I think just a quick note on that, Jeff, I love that visibility extends to SharePoint. And I know this probably goes without saying when you're thinking of the greater Microsoft umbrella. And for those of you that are licensed with Microsoft, right, it's an all-encompassing solution: Teams, Viva, SharePoint, OneNote, right, your email. It's all interwoven and connected. And I can tell you, for us here at Managed Solution, and in my position working with our partners and our clients, I'm able to leverage Copilot internally to refer to and look up previous SALs and documents and training materials that our team has put together over the years. Granted, it's extensive documentation that's been very well documented by my predecessors here at Managed Solution, but I can very quickly prompt Copilot to put together a budgetary estimate for our clients and our partners that are looking at deploying Entra ID, or does it make sense to leverage E7 for this within this organization for this subsect of users, right? And it's been amazing from somebody like myself, who candidly is not super technical. So to have right all of this at my
Oh,
fingertips is
don't undersell yourself, Alexis. I've seen what you can do. It's pretty darn good.
with your
So,
prompts, Jeff, with
yeah.
Copilot. Let's add that. He's helped me. He's done a lot of training. But yes, just personally, I can attest to that aspect. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's kind of where we want to pivot over to, when the bundle wins and when it doesn't. Ashley, if you don't mind, and I know this is going so quick, but maybe if we can go through some of the components here of when it makes sense again.
Yeah, absolutely. So this slide's particularly built around who already has the E5 license. So E5 is going to be the primary component of these users that we're talking about on this particular page, and when it makes sense to add on the E7 or upgrade to E7. So if they already have the two first lines there that are red, we're going to focus on those. If they only have the Copilot license along with their E5, there's not really a need to go ahead and move forward and get that E7 license at this time. But if they have additional components, like the full Entra suite, if they only have one of those components of the Entra suite that are building that up, and I will show you what that is here in a moment in a couple more slides. I have it all broken down for you. But if they only have one piece in this example, private access, and they're just replacing a VPN, it's not going to make sense. It's not going to be cheaper for them to move over to E7. But if they have that full Entra suite, if they have Agent 365 along with the Copilot in the E3 or E5, I mean, of course, at that point, it's going to make sense. So two out of those three out of the four, I should say, components is really where the key is going to hit if they should move forward. There's a few different examples here where this is going to be the same price if you have the Copilot in the Entra suite along with your E5. It just makes sense to go to the E7. You're going to get that Agent 365 for free, and you're prepared for the future. If you have Copilot E5 and you're thinking, hey, I'm at the point that I need to add that Agent 365, I'm noticing that there's agents getting built in the environment. I feel like this is most IT directors I'm talking to today that are in this circumstance right here. It's going to make the most sense for you to go ahead and take the plunge towards E7. If you're adding that Agent 365 on, it is the time because you're going to wind up getting it cheaper than buying those three licenses separately. So there you go. Hopefully that's nice and clear. But the golden rule on this one is two or more components, then you're probably in the right bucket to move over.
And this is another way of looking at it, right? Of, everyday users versus power users versus security IT owners. I think this paints the picture really well of helping make those decisions.
yeah, and I think if you were thinking about this kind of in the reverse way, right? Because one of the biggest questions I continue to receive is who's a good fit for an E7 license, right? And I think the more important question here is who's not a good fit for an E7 because there's so many, even for
Hmm.
organizations that it does make sense for a number of their end users to leverage E7 and more, it's more likely that you're not going to need everyone on an E7. I just want to make that call out that it is not a license type for every single end user unless there's an anomaly of some sort within the organization. But
Yeah.
Ashley, I'll pass it
Yeah.
back over to you and to kind of talk through this.
No, you're absolutely correct. So just like E5 has not always been the primary license that everyone should be on, there's scenarios where I've come across companies that really need that security and that component of compliance, and they really need the best licenses, and everyone's touching sensitive data in their company, so they're all on E5. But that is definitely the exception to the rule where you'll mostly have an E3 or lower license as the primary suite. So it's really focusing on the users that are already on the E5 and if it makes sense to move from E5 to E7. And here's where you can see an everyday user, maybe they have Copilot along with their E5. Those agents that they potentially build with their Copilot licensing, it's probably not going to be those work on the behalf of autonomous agents that Jeff was speaking to earlier. It's probably going to be a very simple agent. And they are probably not to the point of needing to get governance over those agents. You're thinking about really high sensitive detail, high, if you want to say top secret, confidential information. That's where you're going to think of, if the agents are touching that kind of information, you're going to want some more security and compliance over those agents. Power users, that pretty nice middle one, that's where you're really going to hone in on people that are going to be creating those robust agents that are going to be touching a lot of different things. They're going to be, like Jeff pointed out earlier, using a lot of agents all together. You want to be able to manage all of those agents for those users. The user themselves need that license, and whoever else is going to be governing that user, maybe the department head or maybe the IT director, those are the people that are going to want to have at least Agent 365, that Entra suite, Copilot probably, and Copilot and Microsoft 365 are likely already assigned to these people already. So we're just going to go ahead and bump them up. And then the last but not least, where we have the security and IT directors, which are the people that I talk to the most. So I have a lot of input from those guys and ladies. And this is where that scenario comes in, that you're in a situation, hey, you've adopted AI, y'all are moving forward into the agent era of your department or your company, and you want to make sure you're governing what's going on here. And that's where that's going to make sense for IT directors specifically to move over to the E7.
Perfect. And you can clearly see from this perspective how bundled packages often really save in the long run. Ashley, if you just wanted to do a quick little overview of what this means here.
Most definitely. So your E5 license is going to go up next month in July. I show on here today what the list prices are. And keep in mind, this is the annual pay monthly term. So I want to keep that at everyone's front of mind, because Microsoft's advertising at that annual rate of $99. So if you do break that down, that's $99 a month. However, that's paying for the full year upfront. It's $103.95 list price for the annual pay monthly term. So here's where you'll really see each of those prices components, what's really in each one of these licenses. So you have your E5 on top. That's going to be the primary suite license for these individuals you're looking at. Of course, then you're going to have your Copilot. That's the most common license that is being added onto E5s. Your Entra suite, which is the newest component that Microsoft's bundling into this E7. And that's where all of that governance, that identity management is coming into play. That's where you're really going to help manage that for the user itself. Agent 365 comes in next. That's where that identity management extends to those agents. It's going to help give all the governance, that visibility we talked about. Without that key right there, you're not going to have the visibility and the governance that you can mandate those agents a little more clearly and put up those guardrails, because that's super important in security today. So
Yeah,
hopefully that
definitely
breaks it down for you guys.
lots of savings. Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, I was going to say, just to kind of drive everything and wrap it up here, is that, there might be some immediacy to do more Copilot productivity. That's where we can help get you right-sized on the license requirements there. But if there's workflow automation and then also just the full AI operational model, when you think about long-term strategy, you really kind of want to think about all of the components that we covered together, because they all fit in terms of making sure that you can scale AI at your comfort level without, having lack of visibility, afraid of being unsecured, things, and going outside of your organization boundaries.